Hello, everybody. This is Morten from English. I have the pleasure of being with my very good friend Richard Askam here on English. So, welcome, Richard.
Morning, Morten. How are you?
Thank you. I am very well, and I hope you are too. Just a question: the I don't think that many people on that are connected with a lot of interesting people on the internet these days can have any doubts about what you are about to talk to me about today about the print island. So that is part of the topic that I would like to talk to you about today. Obviously, when you talk about the print island, are you referring to the UK or?
It's the world. We all live on the same island, in my opinion, Morten. And the biggest problem, and one of the reasons for doing the whole project, is that some people have never left that island. And my job, as I see it, is to help them build a boat.
Mm. Um, the first time you and I met each other was, as you mentioned, 7 years ago in
Hmm.
Brussels, where our common friend Michel's had a conference where you were talking about the print island. That was the first time I heard about it,
Mm.
and we still have the recording of that session online, and I still think it's a very good session. So I can recommend people to go and see that if they are curious about why also the Ireland is a great abbreviation or kind of, let's say, understanding of how you see the printing industry. Before we talk about um, what you want to achieve, one of the things that I was curious about when you started pushing it on LinkedIn was obviously that you got some really interesting people around you that seems to share some kind of vision. What is it you want to achieve with the Print Island initiative?
I think that the logic, I'll come on to the logic in a second, but the idea of collecting a group of people from around the world, we call them the Avengers. So the Avengers have assembled. I've been very fortunate, Morten, as you know, and you've been very great friend to me in that regard over the years of being able to go around the world and speak at events and host events and so on and so forth, and interview various people, some of whom for Inkish as well, of course. And you, of course, along the way, meet some really interested and talented people. And I think the print industry is unique in the regard of how willing they are to share their knowledge, their experience, their innovation with each other. And that was something that was quite new to me when I came into this world. I come from the drinks industry, as you know, in my history, and that's much more. It's my idea. I'm going to keep it to myself, sort of approach. So it was a very wide-eyed world that I came into 10 years ago in the print industry. And so when this whole idea of creating Print Island came along, it was an obvious choice for me to engage with those Avengers and have it be as wide and broad a church of opinion as possible, because
Mm,
it's a global industry. I think
mm,
to have just one opinion, just one view, just one territory limits the opportunity, because I have this phrase that I use now: from Arkansas to Singapore, those printers have kind of got the same problems, the same
mm,
challenges. Um, wouldn't it be more interesting if they could share those solutions with each other? And
mm,
we've created a place where they can come and talk and listen and hear and engage. And Print Island is that place.
mm. So, what is Print Island? Because maybe I remember wrong, but I think that one of your evangelists, Chris Min, in the beginning, I think he wrote something like that it was a new kind of way of thinking, also exhibitions. I mean, is that also because all of you have, I think, very talented skills in speaking in public fora and things like that, so that the Print Island also want to, let's say, take opportunities to come and speak at public events, and that is part of your deliverables, or what is it the main? Let's say that a printing company wants to learn more about what you actually do. How what do they get, and how do they get in contact with you guys?
What's quite interesting, Morton, is it's developed and evolved quite quickly from its initial idea, which was to be a YouTube channel show that we
Mhm.
create for the industry, by the industry. So we keep talking about it's made for print, made by printers for printers.
Mm,
So that at the very least we have that conversation that we all enjoy having at the end of the day at the bar, where everybody talks to each other properly. Because when you've got your professional hat on the trade show floor, everybody's a little bit more guarded or a bit more professional than they need to be. So we wanted to recreate that environment. But that's actually evolved quite quickly into a much broader concept than that. So still a subscription channel, still going to have this YouTube show that we create and put out every 2 weeks. But actually what we've learned very, very quickly is there's an awful lot more information that you can share with people, but not necessarily that they need to see. So we're going to create, as you remember from the original Print Island speech, I created that map of the island and all the reference points on it were to do with the industry. It's still that. So when you come to our channel, you'll be able to choose the content that you want, whether you want a deep dive into a product review of a particular piece of hardware or software, or you want to hear an extended interview with somebody that you may not normally hear from at trade shows, more about the why than the what. Obviously, there'll be the YouTube show in the middle. We're going to be doing a feedback section, a little bit like there's a great show on Radio 4 in the UK that people write in, and then they have experts answer those questions, that kind of thing. And then this morning, it's just occurred to me this morning that one of the things that we don't do is review the print media. So I'm not sort of egotistical enough to think that this is a print media, but I think it's a place where you can come and find out what you want to find out. So Print Island is an island. It's it's why I've grown a beard, because I'm a castaway on the island. A place where printers, but also potentially customers can come, because let's be honest, one of the reasons that the print is dead debate keeps happening all the time is because the industry isn't very good at communicating what it does with the outside world. So the brands, the agencies, the consumers, the campaigners, all the people that don't understand what print really is can come to the island and learn a little bit more.
If you think of your co-Print Island evangelists and how you see yourself as a group of people, do you complement each other well in the sense of because you're industry people, you have a background, or most of you have a background in the printing industry, and as you mentioned that you're also interested in reaching out to, let's say, the print buyers and maybe the designers and all these people here. I mean, do you have what it takes to do that, or is that a learning process as well?
I think I would be very egotistical if I thought we have what it takes, but I think we have the right ingredients to make a really good cake. And that breadth of experience, we have people from the US, from the UK, from Europe, from the Middle East, from the Far East, and from Australia. So all the way around the world with decades of hands-on experience in the industry. So if they'll have done it, whatever you are thinking about, they will have done it in some cases. And of course, as you rightly say, they're very experienced presenters, very experienced communicators, and that's the key bit here. Print Island really is to help the industry communicate what it does better to the outside world. You've heard me say this a million times, that the print industry is the tech industry. It just doesn't know it. So when they're trying to appeal to a wider audience, it tends to get a little bit limited in the communication that they use. I had a great conversation last year with an advertising agency in London, one of the world's biggest advertising agencies, and we were talking about print. And they started to pull this face, oh yeah, print. And I went, what's the problem? So why do you keep calling it print? Why don't you call it content? Because if we called it content, then instantly the content creators would go, sorry, did you say content? And sometimes the language that we use and the phrasing that we use is stuck in the past. I think if we want to grow the industry, if we want to encourage young people into the industry, we're going to have to change the way that we talk about it.
I actually had some discussions about that, because Joanne Gore from Canada, that you also know, and also Eric Vessel, that you know from Tactiful and former What They Think, speaks about sexy print and also try to rephrase the wording of what we do. And and I'm 57, so I'm probably getting too old for this shit. But
I'm 58, so you're the youngster on this call.
But my point was, like, in the discussion, that what we deliver is print, and therefore you can always argue whether rephrasing it or renaming an entire industry is the short-term objective of talking to, let's say, advertising agents. Because what is it that they sell? They sell conversions or eyeballs and things like that. And yes, you're right that wordings can help, but understanding of how you get that can also help, right? And
Absolutely.
I think that this industry has maybe been too bad at actually promoting the valuation and the value of what we as an industry actually deliver. I wrote actually on LinkedIn, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, that a little harsh message, because the problem is, Richard, I tell you, and I think that it was great that you mentioned that that evaluation of media, that could be interesting to do. But the thing is kind of crazy. When I make films, and that is my core business,
Hmm.
it is difficult for me to, I can't do it and I won't do it, but I can't put a film on display on my LinkedIn page and say, see how bad this is. Because everybody would just say, yeah, it's just because you didn't do it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, because that would be like a selfish, but this industry needs to market itself better. And sometimes in your face information would be better in order to actually get to that next level. That was just my opinion. And I
No,
know that
and
you
that's good.
appreciate
We
that you can say
we
your
do that.
opinions
We
as
do.
well, right?
Yeah, we do that. Well, let me tackle each one of those actually, because I'm agreeing with you, by the way. But I'll just sort of explain myself a little bit better. Three things. First and foremost, print. People don't recognize when they see print; they just imagine what they think is print. So everything that you see behind me on my wall of
Mm,
fame, with the lovely Sophia Loren there and various
mm,
stuff, is print. But we don't
mm,
describe it as that. We describe it as photographs.
mm,
Because that's a better way of doing it. So that's point one. Point two, you don't have to rename the entire industry, but from time to time, in order to explain it to people, you may have to use different words. So I use the product that I work with on personalization, which was Marmite.
mm.
And Marmite as a product, the contents of that jar is the waste product from the brewing industry. That's
Yeah,
what's in there.
and
Okay.
it tastes like shit. So yes, you're
Well,
right.
there we go. It's yeast. That's your opinion. It's yeast extract, right? But they can't
I
call it
tell
that
you,
because
I tell you why. I remember the first time I was exposed to it, I thought it was like a vegan marmalade, right? So if you have that kind of expectation for something nice and sweet on your bread, you can only get disappointed, right?
well, I will follow the company line and say you either love it or hate it. So
Yeah.
that's fine. But my point is that they don't call it what it is. They call it
Mm.
what will sell it. And that's the example there. I can't now remember what my third point was, but I'm sure it was
No,
very
but
good.
of course it was. I just want to add one thing. I don't disagree on that note. Of course, I'm just saying that because the industry, in my view, has been so bad marketing itself at all,
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't matter what it's called, but it matters that we start
But the
marketing
but
our
but the
products and
problem is,
services, right?
but
Yeah.
I think it's a bigger problem than that, Morton. And this is the whole premise of Print Island. And if you cast your mind back all those years when we were in Brussels and I was saying this, the biggest problem is that the industry doesn't know that it's bad at communicating. It thinks it's good. The whole notion of Print Island was everybody on the island knows everybody on the island, and they talk
Mm,
to each other. That's great,
mm,
but they
mm.
don't talk to anybody else. And
I
so
remember that. Yeah. Mm,
I'm
mm.
extending that metaphor really. The Print Island concept now is to encourage people to understand that they're bad at communicating, and then do something about it.
Okay. Let me throw the first provocation to you, because you said it's a subscription-based system, right?
Yep.
Solution.
Yep.
So if this is so important, why only talk to between 2 and 5% of the population?
Well, that's always going to be the trick, isn't it? With anything, you put your products on sale and in the market, and then the customer decides whether or not they buy it. I've been doing that for years in the drinks industry. I did it for years with personalized Coca-Cola, which is the thing that most people know me for, which is back again, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. But just because you think you've got the best thing in the world, you're 100% convinced that what you've got is the best thing in the world, and then it's up to the population to decide how many of them wish to buy it. You can't control that. There's no way that
No,
you can
no,
get
but
saturation.
the reason I'm asking is just because, in my view, and that has been why we don't have payment walls, for example, on
Yep.
Linkies, has always been that, okay, if you want to drive a business where you don't want to talk to 2 to 5% of conversions, you have to figure out new business models.
Agreed.
And I would say that if you can't figure out doing new business model, something that is so brilliant as you just spoke about, are you then at all capable of talking to something that has relevance?
Well, this is the choice that we made in terms of the business model. Your business model, which I know very well, you and I have worked together for a lot of years now, is to be paid to produce beautiful films, and you do it. You're the best in the business by far. if we were paid to produce content, then some people would say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you, because you've been paid to say that. So the sort of largely the only way to remain independent and authentic is to ask the viewer to pay. So you face that choice, and in the same way that your choice is, okay, we will charge you this much to make a film about you. Do they know how many people will watch? There's no guarantee. It's the same model, just in reverse, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that. The reason why I'm asking it, and I think it was a good answer, by the way, is the I had discussions also again with Eric Wessels when he was president for What They Think, because I think that in a world that is so much faster than it used to be, and in a world that is also driven more by, let's say, sponsorships and advertising than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that you know better than most that that is the case. I said to Eric, in my view, independency doesn't come from who pays, but comes from who asks the questions.
That's a reasonable point.
And therefore I'm just thinking, because I'm not questioning the model. I am just questioning the fact that if we really want to grow this industry, to make it a better industry, of course it's a shame that you build another island where you're talking about, let's say, all the good things that can grow us as an industry. And I understand that, of course, you need to have some revenue from in order to do your business and make sure that these things are happening. But I guess that you understand also my point about it, because
totally.
I think,
there's no good answer to that, Morten, as you know, which I'm assuming is why you asked the question. But when you look,
it's to be frank with you, Richard, it is. I think that one of the challenges we have in the industry is the lack of development of business models. And then when we see a new player in the market like Print, I know you've been very visual and very vocal in the past 1.5, 2, 3 months, something like that, where I have been. I think that I hope you have got a lot of curious people, what is it and what to expect and how do we get involved if they want to get involved and all these kind of things. And when we reach out to each other a few days ago, it was with the intention, of course, promoting what you're doing, because I think that all initiatives in the industry that can bring us forward is important and good. But the business models, and that's why I was just questioning you. So it was not so much that it was good or bad. It was more from the, let's say, if you don't get enough subscribers, then you cannot produce the best content.
No, I would agree with that. Of course, I understand that better than anybody. I guess it's a numbers game, as all things are. Your 2 to 5% is 2 to 5% of about 1.5 million people that work in the industry worldwide. One of the reasons that we wanted it to be a worldwide show and have a feeling from Arkansas to Singapore is to access that 1.5 million. So you could argue that 2 to 5% of 1.5 million people is a lot of people, is a lot of subscription. And then from there, all you can do is hope to grow.
But let me challenge that, because the problem is with the people that you have on board. And that is my other challenge, is that industry people have often a lot of difficulties actually speaking the language of the PSPs and the employees, because you're right, there's a lot of people working in the industry. I think that I was almost banned from the European media just a few years ago.
I'm surprised, Morten.
because I wrote, and I actually included English, so I didn't point finger at anybody. I pointed finger at everybody, including ourselves. And that is that you can make the best films, you can have the best design, you can have the best music, you can have the best of everything. But if you can't get viewers that are not industry viewers, but the actual PSPs and their employees to watch, see, whatever, then we're not talking about 1.5 million people. I can tell you a little thing that I actually found it a little bit intriguing, and also is that maybe you can do it yourself. If you look at some of the posts that you do, and you look at the people that like them or comment on them, and see, then I don't know how you do that, but often I go into the list and see that, okay, 20 likes or 20 comments, who is actually responding. And it is the same people all the time.
Yeah.
And it has, one of the things that I have kind of reflected on is that, is this industry, when it comes to the industry level, actually so tiny that we are again on that island that you've been talking about, that it is maybe the right word for your project should not be print island. Maybe it should just be bridge.
Possibly. And I talked about, if you remember, I talked about building a raft and sailing to neighboring islands and talking about it.
Mm,
And it may well be that the design of the island has a lake in the middle of the island, and in the middle of that lake is a smaller island, and that's actually where the industry is. So you may well be right. I guess our sort of our bet, if you like, on print island as a concept is, by having that worldwide spread of Avengers and ambassadors and correspondents and supporters and advocates from around the world, they each have their own echo chamber.
mm,
But collectively, those echo chambers add up to an awful bigger echo
okay.
chamber. So
Okay.
it's a vehicle for amplification as
Okay.
much as anything else. The subscription model, just to sort of answer your earlier question, really is, as you rightly say, we're running a business. So in order for everybody to make some money and pay the editors and do all the things that need to be done, how much that costs. You have to choose your model as to which way you're going to create income. I'm not saying we're going to stick with subscription. That's just where we're starting.
Yeah. Good. But I hope you get my point about the business model, because that
No,
was
totally.
actually a broader perspective of the
Yeah.
conversation, not only relating to the
Well,
print island.
you and I have had this conversation over many cold drinks
Mm,
and beautiful fish over the years. So it's a debate, isn't it, that we
mm,
are
mm,
engaged in. I don't think
mm,
either of us have the answer, but you have to understand the argument that you're having in order to be able to compete in that debate.
mm. An assumption, and we have the same assumption, but we also have actually altered a little bit over the years, and that is like, there is a when you talk about the global market, there is global problems that can be approached centralized or in a broad perspective. Because I mean, Scott Mackey from Singapore, his vast knowledge and background from the Far East, and your colleague in Australia, and Jacques Michel, my old former colleague in
Mm-hmm.
Belgium, and yourself from the UK, that there is a common denominator among the industry that you're talking to. How certain are you about that?
I think again, all you can do is start at the beginning and see.
Oh, did I annoy you, or?
No. No, you'd struggle. You'd struggle to do that. You know that. Scott's a great example. In fact, he's going to be our guest host on episode 2, coming up later this month. See what I did there? But thank you very much. Subscribe here.
Yeah.
But Scott brings a world of experience beyond my knowledge set.
Mm,
As well as I do that. I know that much about the print
mm,
industry.
mm,
All of these people put together, and we're talking about Jess DeCola in the US, we're talking about Sarah Hawley in the US. So boys and girls, which is hugely important to us, from across the industry with hands-on experience, will each
mm,
have a view of the print industry as it really is, not
mm,
as we're told that it ought to be, but as it
mm,
actually really is. And
mm,
one of the inspirations for this was Top Gear,
mm,
which we always felt was a great show because it was car lovers
mm,
talking about cars, but not necessarily the way that the manufacturer would have you do it.
mm,
But as it turned out, the manufacturers queued up to have them review their cars because they
mm,
had the audience. So
mm,
what I hope and what we hope brings an audience to this will be, and funny enough, my previous call to you was with Kelvin in Australia,
mm,
and he's doing all of his interviews on the golf course.
mm,
So he's going to play golf with people and chat to them on
mm,
the way around, and that's going to be the
mm,
way that he does it. I've given
mm,
them creative freedom to do
mm,
as they wish. What would they watch? And
mm,
if they can produce something that they would watch, there's half a chance that the people in their echo chamber would
mm,
want to watch it as well. And
mm,
that's our bet, really.
mm. And um, is there? Are you the editor, or what is your role? I mean, is that like editorial responsibility for the content you create, or? I mean, I'm asking because uh, I have the I've had just under Corona, I had the very unpleasant pleasure of being sued by one of the big vendors
Hmm.
because I was the editor and I was responsible for bringing us in that situation.
Hmm.
And I guess that you will not of course, seek to get in that situation. But if you're talking the real language, and some maybe also sometimes talking against vendor interest, because that is maybe the PSP interest. Are you the editor who is responsible for what is going to be published on the print island?
The joy of any new business, Morten, is you get to decide what you call yourself rather than applying for a role that already exists. So I decided to call myself the executive producer because essentially my job is to herd the cats, as has been described to me, around the world of content creators. And they are in their own editorial control of their own
they
content.
will be responsible themselves for whatever content they create.
Correct. Now, they are very fully aware, because most, if not all of them, come from a corporate background. And although there is a desire to speak freely, there is also a desire to speak politely, because I think there's such a thing, and Americans do this brilliantly, which is fearless feedback. You know, if you ask somebody what they think, you should expect to be told. You know, so I think that's important, that freedom of speech exists. But what we're not in the business of doing is upsetting anybody deliberately. You know, so if you watch Top Gear, for example, each of the three presenters were at times quite rude about some of the cars that they tried, but they were never they never crossed the line in terms of, you know, denigrating or libeling the company.
I don't think that anybody wants that to happen.
No,
I didn't when I was in that position.
Sure.
But it happened, right? So I'm just asking because of that. And the reason I'm asking is just because I like the idea about Print Island. I like the idea that you are different places in the world, different backgrounds, but have a common communication platform.
Yeah,
I think that is a very good idea, and I think it's something that people should support. Not support for the sake of the support, but support it because I hope it will be valuable information that they can learn from, and of course, from that perspective, become better in their business.
Absolutely.
Businesses. Yeah.
Which is all of our goal, isn't it? Is to grow the industry. You know, because then everybody wins. You know, but it needs collective communication, and you know, that communication is my thing, right? That's what I do for a living. So, you know, being able to describe that in a way that people, if all they do, Morten, is tune in and watch some of our content and go, oh, I didn't know that. That would be enough, you know, because we can create that curiosity for them to go and find out.
Fantastic. I mean, it's a YouTube channel that you subscribe to, right?
Yes. So that will be up later this month. We've given all the first episode away for free to let people see what it is that they're subscribing
on YouTube
to.
Or
so that's currently on our website, but it plays on YouTube. So the YouTube channel at the moment is currently open, but at the end of this month it will become subscription. And
what is the website?
The website is theprintisland.com.
Fantastic, right? So what else to say is that just go and read a little bit more. Come and have a look.
Yeah, come and have a look. Come and meet the people that you'll be hearing from. I mean, even though we've gone for a global span, of course, there's people here that don't know the people here. You know, it's funny, isn't it, that we walk into these trade shows around the world, or airport lounges or hotel bars, you know, and there's always somebody in there that you know, and you imagine that you know everybody as a result. The reality is, you know who you know. And they know who they know. So the job of our work is to introduce the people we know to the people that they know, and then let them communicate. And you build a communication pyramid as a result of that. There's no real vehicle for that. You know, trade shows being as they are at the moment, the world being as it is at the moment, I don't think people are as keen to travel. It's expensive, you know, as keen to travel as much as they used to. So we're losing a little bit of that ability to communicate as we do in the best possible way, which is human to human.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard Askam here on English, and all the best with the Print Island. And maybe we can do a follow-up in a few months' time to see how things are going. I think it's always interesting to see how progress is with initiatives. So if you like, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. You know that.
Likewise, Richard. All the best. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.